This week on the show, there's some mixed signals coming from Mercari and some strange updates over at eBay. What is up, Galaxians? Welcome to episode number 251 of the Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host. We've got some mixed signals from Mercari, some strange things going on over there, and some very unusual updates over at eBay as well. So at the back end of the show, we, as always, will have some interesting stuff in the What Sold segment. But let's get right into this reselling news.
News updates.
So this news broke on, I believe, on Wednesday. A quick hat tip to Liz O'Kane, Colorado Reworn, over on Instagram, who was the first one to kind of tip us off to this. But this article appeared over on Value Added Resource. Links to these will, of course, be in the show notes and the video description below. Mercari is undertaking a significant mass layoff after months of turmoil caused by fee structure and business operations shakeup. An anonymous tech worker posted on Blind saying that they have a friend who was affected and that the layoffs are reportedly impacting 45% of full-time employees, which is a big number. Here's a quick look at the link if you're watching on YouTube. Mercari layoffs inbound, just got the heads up from a friend, 45% FTE. Others have taken to Reddit, with some claiming to be ex-employees or friends of ex-employees that also echoed this 45% figure. Mercari, as far as I know to this point, has not made any official announcements about this. LinkedIn did show multiple Mercari employees posting open to work messages over the last couple of days, confirming they and many of their colleagues had been laid off. And judging by those posts, the cuts appear to be across many areas and levels, including UX, design, data science, business intelligence, marketing, software and engineering, customer support, and more. That's a lot of folks. The layoffs come at a tumultuous time for the company as it struggles to retain buyers and sellers after a massive shakeup to its fee structure and return policies announced back in March. The marketplace, as we've talked about on this show on numerous occasions, dropped selling fees on transactions but instituted a $2 payment withdrawal fee for sellers and then shuffled a variable service fee and payment fees onto buyers instead in a confusing process, unlike most online venues. Sellers, of course, have expressed concerns that seeing all fees tacked on at checkout will scare off buyers, and if feedback across Reddit and other social media platforms, including this channel, are any indication they aren't wrong. I can tell you from personal experience, just last week I was looking to buy an item, and I shopped it on Mercari, and I shopped it on eBay. I had the $10 credit from Mercari, which we will talk about a little further on in the show. So it looked like the purchase price for the item I was looking at might be less money on Mercari, but when I went to the shopping cart, and the transaction fee and the service fee were added, it turned out that it was actually cheaper to still buy it over on eBay, even though the raw price was a little bit higher. So they kind of talk about, here's what the actual buyer experience with that new fee structure looks like. You look at an item, which is what I did. You checked it out, you went to checkout, and all of a sudden you had these extra fees. Now, to be fair, my business has not really been affected by that. And I've seen a lot of sellers who say their business has actually increased over on Mercari. So from a seller standpoint, I don't have any complaints. Buyers, however, have expressed their frustration with the lack of transparency about how the fees are determined, with many saying there appears to be no rhyme or reason and that similar items of the same brand category and price are often showing different fees, which range anywhere from 5 to over the 10% sellers used to be charged. That I've talked about that here as well. I had one sale come through several weeks ago that had a 1% service fee on it. So there's no, as the article said, no rhyme or reason. Mercari's most recent quarterly financial report shows the rate could get even more confusing and opaque, as they are also considering a surge pricing system where fee rates would fluctuate with supply and demand. There was a kind of late in the week update on this on the 13th. An ex-Mercari employee has confirmed that 45% figure, saying that represents plus or minus 100 roles that were eliminated across the U.S. this week. So I guess first off, my thoughts go out to those people who were affected by that. Never a good time for it, and hopefully those people will all land on their feet. An internal message that was shared with Value Added Resource shows Mercari U.S. CEO John Lagerling breaking the news, saying employees had, quote, showed up with talent, professionalism, and grit during some tough times, but the business has not performed well amid macro headwinds and, admittedly, some strategic mistakes, which is big of him to say, to be frank. Lagerling went on to list some of those mistakes, explaining that the company grew too quickly in the belief they would have continued growth from pandemic-era highs that ultimately did not materialize, and taking responsibility for not successfully navigating the post-pandemic landscape. I don't know. I guess saying you take responsibility for it is great in the scheme of things, but those folks all still lost their jobs. So I don't know how heartwarming that was. He also admitted what many have feared since March: the changes in Mercari's fee structure may have convinced sellers to list more items on the site, but have not had the hoped-for impact on active buyers and gross merchandise volume. Now, that may be a short-run thing. If they take the time and they stick with this, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, I think they're going to, because they're running some other stuff that's almost going to force their hand on that. I think they're hoping that this thing will continue to gather momentum. As there are more sellers and there are more listings, they will just naturally attract more buyers, and that hopefully the negative aspect of the way the fees are being structured will not drive away a lot of those buyers. That remains to be seen. He went on to say, more recently, changes to our fee structure have helped us increase listings, but have not yet delivered the short-term results that we had hoped for on the buyer GMV side. To remain viable in the U.S. market and ultimately get back on track, he said, we must cut costs and consolidate quickly. That is a bit ominous. I've talked about before, I would like Mercari to be a much bigger piece of my sales mix. Right now, on any given week, it's 5 to 10% by transaction volume. Generally a little less than that on dollar volume, because it's mostly lower cost items that I sell over there. Obviously, with no fees, I would like it to be a much, much bigger piece of what I do broadly. But the fact that they're saying to remain viable in the U.S. market gives you some kind of indication that maybe they are struggling, and that there's a possibility, I guess, that longer term they may not be around. I would hate to lose 10% of my business, although I think a lot of those folks would migrate over to eBay or Etsy or wherever. So, but hopefully they can get this sorted. According to the memo, impacted employees were provided with COBRA coverage and separation packages determined by individual tenure at the company. And again, as of this date, which was, I believe, on Friday, Mercari had still not responded to requests for comment. So again, thoughts go out to the people who were involved in this, and frankly to the company. It's never fun. I spent a lot of time in corporate America and I've done my share of layoffs over the years, and it's never a pleasant thing to do, whether you've got to do it or not. It's just not fun for anybody involved, and obviously particularly for those who are on the receiving end of those cuts. The reason this is all kind of mixed signals is obviously this is bad news. There are massive layoffs, 45% of their staff, a significant conversation about needing to make these cuts to consolidate and save money to remain viable. Yet at the same time, they're spending massive amounts of money on marketing proposals. I mentioned the $10 credit. Seemingly every week or so, I'm getting a message from Mercari that I have a $10 credit that I can use for any purchase. As soon as one of those expires, I've got another one. Obviously, their hope, I'm sure, is that the $10 credit will be offset by the fees that they earn, and or that you will, if you receive that and use it, you'll become a more active user on Mercari, maybe become a seller as well, which we're going to talk about in a minute also. But you get involved in their ecosystem and maybe you stick around, but they can't continue to fund, $10 a week or every 2 weeks for every person on the platform. I understand, having spent time in corporate America, marketing budgets are one thing, and promotional budgets and advertising budgets, and those are different, and they are separate from things like payroll expenses. But you can see where someone who's involved in business or in the business would understand that. But from just the outside perspective, a lot of folks would say, hey, well, how are you spending all this money on marketing and you're laying people off simultaneously? I guess, fortunately, Mercari's not huge enough that this has got a lot of traction in mainstream media. When I went looking for other articles besides the one we just talked about, I couldn't really find anything. So maybe this will slide under the radar a little bit for people who are not active over there. But to the marketing standpoint, this occurred back in April. I can't remember if I talked about this on the podcast, but MoneyGram Haas F1 team and Mercari US joined forces with a new sponsorship. MoneyGram Haas F1 is pleased to announce a new regional partnership with Mercari, the online marketplace that connects millions of people across the U.S. to shop and sell new, unique, and pre-loved items. Mercari's partnership with America's Formula One team kicks off this week. This, again, was back in April at the Japanese Grand Prix. Mercari's online marketplace provides a community for casual sellers, deal seekers, and avid collectors to easily buy and sell items that are often hard to find anywhere else. That philosophy has been their touchstone for many, many years. They are kind of changing that a little bit, and we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. Mercari's sponsorship of the MoneyGram Haas F1 team will continue throughout the season, with the Mercari logo featured on a car in Japan and at Haas's 3 home races, Miami, which already occurred, Austin, which will be in October, and Las Vegas, which happens in November. If you want to know why I know that without that having actually been in the article, I'm a huge F1 fan. And I can tell you, these sponsorships are not cheap. This was probably even though it's 4 events, this was, I'm sure, a very significant investment by Mercari. They said, "We are delighted to expand our partnership roster with the addition of Mercari, a U.S. company focused on pushing the limits and raising the bar for the way e-commerce should be," shared Mark Morell, MoneyGram Haas F1 team's director of marketing. Mercari is an ambitious organization that isn't afraid to challenge industry predecessors. Obviously, that is true with the way they've rearranged their fee structure, which is something we can relate to. If you're not familiar, Haas is a fairly new team. They've been on the grid for, 7 or 8 years. Came in a fairly unconventional way. So this really, from a marketing standpoint, is probably a pretty good fit. But again, the optics of it, you just signed up for this big marketing promotion with a very expensive sport, and then you laid off 45% of your staff. It just looks a little janky. So that's going on. They also, just this weekend, announced another huge promotion for sellers. They have always had a referral program that is available, and they are running a special right now. Earn credits, game on. It says your first 100 listings equals $100. And if you are currently a seller, you can invite friends for up to $10,000. The promotion ends on July 14th. First-time listing gets started today. New listers, this started on June 15th. List and earn. Create your first listing. If you've never listed before, you can earn $100 in Mercari credits when you create 100 unique listings by July 14th. You can verify your profile. It is required to participate, and it helps you earn trust. Plus, verified sellers are 46% more likely, they say, to make a sale. Here's where a lot of people will probably struggle. Verify your government ID on the Mercari app. So they want a picture of your, whatever your state-issued ID is, driver's license, regular non-driver's identification. And I know a lot of people do not want to do this piece of it. It is required for this promotion. If you do it after the promotion period ends in July, we'll issue your credits by August 1st, and it's $100 if you do 100 listings. And there's a handy link then to sell now. New for pro sellers on Mercari. Again, they highlight their 0 selling fees and their easy cross-listing. They can now import up to 3,000 existing listings from eBay, Depop, and Poshmark in just a few clicks. You can do that and very quickly and easily fulfill that 100 listing mark. If you're already listing, they say you can earn up to $10,000 in credits by referring friends. Invite your squad. If you know a pro seller, earn up to $10,000 in credits by inviting up to 200 friends to Mercari, where they can sell with $0 or 0% selling fees. Get your invite code here. Earn $50 in credits for each referral who lists their first 100 items on Mercari by July 14th. This is potentially a huge expenditure. Again, it goes to their plan to try to attract a lot more sellers and kind of runs counter to what they've always done. This is about attracting some pro sellers with some big amounts of listings to really pad that portfolio and give them a lot more stuff to sell. So this is a big deal. I'm I have a referral link down in the show notes and the video description below. If you're not currently listing on Mercari, hey, this might be a good time to do that. We'll see what the future holds for them, but for the time being, you might as well sign up. And if you're going to do that, my link and code is down below. You can help support the channel by giving a click to that. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of all that news from Mercari. Like I said, it's a real mixed bag. There's some good stuff going on there. If you're a seller, the no fees thing, like I said, my sales are flat, but my margins are way up because I'm not paying that roughly 14% in fees over there. So I like it. I like it a lot. But they've got to find a way to make money. And again, the mixed messages between the layoffs and all this marketing stuff is a bit interesting. So leave me a comment down below. Again, as always, if you're getting anything from this, please do me a favor if you're watching on YouTube and hit that thumbs up button. Moving on over to eBay. This was part of the summer seller check-in, and I didn't talk about this specific issue because I did not attend this breakout segment, but I've had a couple of people reach out to me that were a little confused by this. So I wanted to touch on it. eBay International Shipping is soon going to include Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. You may find yourself asking, why would they do that? Those states are states or protected territories or whatever you want to call it of the United States. But they're soon going to allow U.S. sellers to leverage eBay International Shipping hubs to help reduce friction and risk of shipping to domestic locations in those three areas. Program manager Kristen Pincus explained that while they're they are domestic to the U.S., the longer distance can make shipping challenging and expensive, leading sellers to block sales to these locations. There are a large number of sellers that just don't ship there because it is expensive, because it takes an excessively long time, which can lead to some neutral feedbacks and all that. So there are some disadvantages to shipping there. I've never blocked those locations. I've always shipped there, but some sellers have. So now you can just ship to one of the domestic's hubs and have all the protections on refunds, returns, and feedbacks as if you were selling internationally through that program. She said that this will all be happening in Q3. Sellers who already have EIS enabled and will have those states automatically included once they are active, and the option to still self-ship directly to those locations. So that's the gist of it. Let me just play you the quick clip of what she had to say in that session.
And Alaska and Hawaii are non-contiguous U.S. states, so this may sound a little silly given that they aren't international, but eBay International Shipping found a cost-effective solution that allows sellers to reach buyers in these locations by adding them into the EIS program. Even though they aren't really international, we're sneaking them in. If you're already shipping to these locations, no changes are needed, and you'll still benefit from having us move these into the program. But if you are somebody who has them excluded, we think this is the solution for you. The long distance of shipping to Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Hawaii has made it difficult and ultimately costly for some sellers to include these locations. We understand. We're seeing them excluded despite the large buyer pool that exists in these areas. So by including these far away locations into EIS, the seller only has to ship to the domestic hub. You can continue to offer free shipping and only pay the rates to our hub. We'll handle the international portion. We handle the shipping from the hub to the seller and onto their final destination. You also enjoy all the other protections EIS has to offer, like eBay handling returns and refunds at no cost to you and Vero complaints, all the ones I talked about on the last slide. If your account is in good standing and you're already enrolled in EIS, we will automatically display your listings to the expanded locations when they're available. If you're ever curious about what countries you can sell to using EIS, there's a list available on Seller Center. So stay tuned, more information to come as we finalize details on this expansion for Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Hawaii.
So my understanding is, from doing a little further research on this, that the buyer is going to be presented with two choices, the self-ship and the EIS, and then they can select whichever one is cheaper, assuming that you've opted in to do both. So it sounds like what they're saying is if you currently ship yourself to those locations, you can continue to do so. If you do EIS, You'll automatically be enrolled for those states, and then the customer will have the option to choose whichever one they select. They say that they found a way to do this cheaper than what we can do individually. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know if it includes media mail. As she said, there's more details to come. It's still a little sketchy at this point. So we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out. But my understanding is the last part, of course, if you're not shipping to those locations already, you'll be able to start doing that with this program. Expand your buyer pool. Once again, I talk about all the time on the show that growing your buyer pool is the best way to make more money. So this will give you an opportunity to do that. But it is a weird, it's a weird setup for those to be included in the international shipping program. Just seemingly days after banning American Express, eBay is adding Venmo as a payment option. eBay announced today that U.S. buyers can pay on eBay with Venmo at checkout as it rolls out in the coming weeks. eBay said it is aligned with the evolving preferences of today's digital natives. There's a buzzword for you, digital natives. Venmo is owned by PayPal, and eBay said 28% of Venmo users are Gen Zers and millennials within the 18 to 29 age bracket, and a lot of them use this program. It's also noted that over 60% of eBay volume, it didn't say if that was dollar or unit volume, comes from mobile devices, which makes Venmo's mobile platform ideal for digital savvy shoppers looking for a simple and fast checkout process. PayPal's help page about Venmo explains it's a social payment service to make and share payments with friends, family, and businesses in the United States. It's like PayPal, but it's unique that on Venmo you can share and like payments through a social feed. As we talked about last week, as of August 17th, buyers will no longer have the option to pay with American Express, citing unacceptably high fees. eBay announced the news on Venmo on its corporate website. So there you go. They're getting rid of one payment option and adding another. I personally don't have Venmo. I don't use it. I probably should. I get asked about it from time to time, but it's just not something I've ever signed up for. You can let me know if you use it or not. Speaking of your money, eBay is changing the fees for accessing your funds faster. eBay is changing the fees for getting quicker payouts, known as express payouts, framing the change as a positive for sellers. For low-volume sellers who want fast access to funds, it may be a fee increase, while sellers withdrawing larger sums will pay less than they had been, potentially incentivizing sellers to keep their money in eBay's hands longer. This is kind of what Mercari has been doing with their $2 fee, which, to be fair, it's worked on me because I'm not cashing out on Mercari now until I get to $200, where I used to cash out essentially once a week because it was free to do so. It doesn't, $200 one way or the other isn't going to hurt me, but the idea, of course, is to keep that money in their accounts rather than move it very quickly into yours. They are also charging a flat fee of $2. eBay is in effect raising the cost of getting quicker payouts for amounts up to $132.99, which is where the break-even point comes between whatever the old fee was and this new flat fee of $2, while lowering the cost for amounts over $133. In its notice Friday, eBay framed the new fees as a positive by calling them simpler. We're changing express payouts to make them simpler for you. Starting July 1st, 2024, you can take advantage of faster payouts to your Visa or MasterCard debit card for a flat $2 fee and get your money within 30 minutes, even on holidays or weekends. Standard payouts, of course, to your linked bank account are still available for no additional fee. That's where this varies from what Mercari is doing. Mercari is $2 to get your money regardless of how you're moving it. So if you want to take advantage, and not all sellers, my understanding is, are eligible to get this free or $2 fee for this express payout. You have to have met certain qualifications to even qualify for that. So not everybody will qualify, but if you do, the fee is now going to be a flat $2. That's going to put a wrap on this week's news. Let's get into some more fun stuff. Let's talk about what sold. It was a very good week last week over on eBay. It's going to be probably my best week in the last month, so pretty stoked about that. I know I talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It had been pretty slow. Things have rebounded quite nicely. I had 103 listings sold last week for a pretty nice amount, and we're going to cover some of the highlights here in this little segment. First item, this was over on eBay. Official Records of the Union and Confederate Navies, Series 1, Volume 23 from 1910. Picked this up at an estate sale for a couple of bucks. I would have loved to have found the entire set. I would have bought it all, but they only had this one book. Had it listed for $24.99. I sent out one of my normal 15% off offers and sold it for $21.24 to a watcher. Another one over on eBay. War of Wits, The Anatomy of Espionage and Intelligence. This was written by Ladislas Farrago back in 1954. It was a first edition hardcover. Another one that was sold on an offer for $22.39 plus shipping. For sale over on Etsy. Very, very good week for me over on Etsy. I am running a 10% off discount that ended on Sunday on Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, speaking of, to all the fathers out there. But I ran a 10% off thing for about 10 days, and man, it really kickstarted some business over on Etsy. This first one, The Pioneers, or Sources of the Susquehanna by James Fenimore Cooper. This was published by A.L. Burt. It was a hardcover in really nice condition. Had it listed for $24.99 and it sold for $22.49. Another one, kind of the same deal, was on the sale over on Etsy. The 10 Commandments, The Law of Liberty by Taylor G. Bunch from 1944. This was a Review and Herald hardcover. This was, again, part of the big lot of Seventh-day Adventist and other religious books that I bought several weeks ago. I got a couple of bucks in this. It sold for $22.49 after the discount. This was a cool one. So it should have been a lot cooler than it ended up being. A Handbook of Descriptive and Practical Astronomy, Volume 1, Sun, Planets, and Comets from 1889. So when I talked about the estate sale where I did the big buy of all the antique books, and this is one of those. And I've got Volume 2 as well, which I've currently got listed, I think, for $199. So as I was going through these, I unfortunately discovered that this particular book was missing about 25 pages towards the back. Somebody had just literally cut them out. I don't know if there were images on them or if there were particular passages or whatever that made them more attractive. But it was missing a bunch of pages. So I put this thing at a fairly low price because I didn't know, to be fair, if it would even sell with the pages missing. As it turned out, I did get $24.99 out of it. It was part of that big bulk buy. I'm into these books for, I think, about 90-odd cents. So not a terrible flip, but certainly not the $170-odd I would have expected to make had I been able to get it sold for full price. Another one over on eBay, New York City Transit Buses, 1945 to 1975, a photo archive by Guy Martin. This is from 2005. It was a first printing trade paperback. This was part of an estate buyout I did. I'm into these books for about $1 a piece. Had it listed for $29.99. Sold it on an offer for $25.49 plus shipping. Cool old book, Intern's Manual, Cook County Hospital, 4th edition by Arthur Bernstein from 1971. This was a paperback. Obviously had been used by someone at some point, probably in a hospital. It was pretty well worn. Fairly difficult to find. This was part of a big lot that I owned for about 50 cents. It sold for $29.99 plus shipping. Back over to Etsy, The Works of Charles Dickens, Volume 1 and 2, The Pickwick Papers, Part 1 and 2. This was published by P.F. Collier. These were hardcovers from the very late 1800s or the very early 1900s. Cool old books in actually pretty good condition. I've got several of these. I had a whole bunch of these. You may remember if you've been around here for a while. Last spring, the roof blew off my warehouse and I lost a bunch of stuff to water damage. A lot of the most expensive ones that I lost were part of this series, The Works of Charles Dickens. I had some that did not get damaged. This was 2 of those. They sold as a lot for $31.49 on an offer. Brought back some painful memories. Speaking of the warehouse, I did actually make a deal. It's kind of an aside here, but with all the bulk buys I've done over the last 6 or 8 weeks, my warehouse space is actually getting quite full. So they're in the process of still doing some build out over there. And I did arrange to lease another couple of 100 square feet. He gave me a really good deal on it. So I'm going to be expanding my warehouse into a second space in that building. Hopefully with no more trouble with the roof. It's got an all-new roof, so I'm hopeful I won't have to deal with that again. Sticking with Etsy, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and the Marvelous Land of Oz by Frank L. Baum. This was a box set, I want to say from like the 1960s. The box itself had some wear. It wasn't damaged, but it had some staining on it. The books were actually pretty clean. I had it listed for $49.99. It sold as part of my 10% off sale for $44.99 plus shipping. This was part of the big, 15,000 book lot. So I'm into these two books for about a nickel a piece, call it 10 cents. Also from that same lot, African Zion, Attempt to Establish a Jewish Colony by Robert Weisbord from 1968. Hardcover with its dust jacket, fairly hard to find, fairly high value. Had it listed for $64.99. Sold for $58.49 from a cost of goods sold of less than a nickel. This was a cool one. Back to Eden, Healing Herbs, Health, Diet, and Remedies by Jethro Kloss. This was a 23rd printing hardcover from 1970. If you find one of these books, and obviously if you can get it for a few bucks or less, go ahead and grab it. Back to Eden, Healing Herbs, Health, Diet, and Remedies. Even later printings bring really good money. This one sold for $59.99 plus shipping. I bought it at an estate sale for, I think, $2. The Choice, The Issue of Black Survival in America by Samuel F. Yeti from 1972. This was a second printing paperback. So again, a first printing would have been worth even more money. Good deal. This sold over on Etsy. I had it listed for $69.99. Sold for $62.99 with the sale. It was an item that I had picked up at the last day of an estate sale for like 50 cents. And this is your flip of the week. National Guard, District of Columbia from 1940, Army and Navy Publishing, an illustrated hardcover. This thing was in really, really nice shape for a book of its age. I had it listed for $99.99. It got a watcher. I sent out an offer again for 15% off and sold it for $84.99, which is pretty awesome. So all in all, a really good week. Some really great stuff that sold over the week. In addition to the normal bread and butter stuff, it turned out to be a really fantastic week. You can let me know down in the comments below what your week looked like. But man, it was really good here. It's Father's Day today as I record this, and the sales have kept coming all weekend. It's really been strong, so definitely no complaints. As always, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. Remember, we will be here live again on Wednesday. I'm going to show you kind of how I do product research on some of these books using the mobile. Everything I show you will actually be on the phone. So how I research within and outside of eBay. Obviously, we'll have just regular reselling chat as well. So if you're free Wednesday morning at 11 a.m., be sure you come by for that live. If you got anything again out of this episode, please do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button. Share this with any of your like-minded reselling friends. With that, I'm going to put a wrap on it again. Happy Father's Day, belated by the time you hear this, to all the fathers out there. I hope everybody has a great week. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.